Nintendo. You hear that name and you instantly think of video games, right? But their journey is this wild roller coaster of huge wins, some really spectacular failures, and this constant need to reinvent themselves. So today, we're gonna unpack how a company that's over 130 years old didn't just survive, it completely rewrote the rules of the game.
Now, to really get Nintendo, you have to go back to a time of absolute crisis, the great video game crash of 1983. The market was just a swamp of terrible games. I'm talking about the infamous E.T. game for Atari, which was so bad they literally buried thousands of copies in a desert landfill. Seriously. People completely lost faith, and the entire industry just collapsed. This wasn't a small dip, it was a total meltdown.
And that's the big question, right? Because the hero of this story wasn't some big tech company. It was a company that started out making a totally different kind of game. Let's dive in. So to figure this out, we've got to go way, way back, long before anyone had ever heard of Mario or Donkey Kong. You see, Nintendo's story actually starts back in 1889, and they were making these beautiful, handmade Japanese playing cards called hanafuda. And for the better part of a century, that was their whole deal. They even tried out running a taxi service and selling instant rice. Yeah, really. Before they finally pivoted into electronics. And then in 1983, they launched a console in Japan that would change everything.
Okay, so they have a hit in Japan, but bringing that console to the United States, that was a whole other ballgame. The market wasn't just quiet, it was a graveyard of broken consumer trust. I mean, just look at this. The industry's value didn't just dip, it absolutely cratered. We're talking over 90% gone. Retail stores were so furious about being stuck with worthless game cartridges that they swore off video games entirely. The market was basically on life support.
So what did Nintendo do? They got sneaky. They got brilliant. They knew they couldn't sell a video game console, so they didn't. They sold a toy. They took their Famicom, redesigned it to look more like a VCR, and called it the Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES, and they bundled it with this guy, ROB, the Robotic Operating Buddy. He was their Trojan horse, letting them sneak the NES into the toy aisle, completely sidestepping the video game poison.
But getting into stores was only half the battle. They still had to convince people to trust video games again. So, learning directly from Atari's failure, Nintendo created the seal of quality. And this wasn't just some marketing gimmick. It was a rock-solid promise. If a game had this seal, it meant Nintendo approved it, and it wouldn't be a broken piece of junk.
And did it work? Oh, you have no idea. The NES sold over 62 million units worldwide. At its peak, it controlled 90% of the US market. It didn't just sell well, it literally brought an entire industry back from the brink of extinction. Okay, so they're on top of the world, right? But here's the thing about Nintendo, and this is what makes their story so fascinating. Their road to success is just littered with some truly spectacular failures. For every single masterpiece, there's a wild experiment that totally blew up in their faces.
Oh boy, the Virtual Boy. This was Nintendo's first shot at 3D gaming, but it was an absolute train wreck. I mean, it was this weird, clunky red and black headset that you couldn't even wear. You had to lean into it on a table, and it was notorious for causing headaches and eye strain. It was gone from stores in less than a year. A great idea, maybe, but terrible, terrible execution. Or check out this whiplash. The Wii was a global phenomenon. It got everyone from kids to grandparents playing video games. A massive success. But its successor, the Wii U, oof. It was confusing, nobody understood what the tablet controller was for, and it just flopped hard. It sold less in its entire lifetime than the PS4 sold in just 1 year. But here's the secret sauce. None of this was a waste. Those failures, those bad ideas, the flawed designs, they were all just lessons. In fact, you can draw a straight line from the confusing two-screen idea of the Wii U to the brilliant hybrid design of their next big hit. And all those lessons led directly to this, Nintendo's incredible modern comeback story, a console that, once again, nobody saw coming. Just let that number sink in for a second. Over 140 million. Remember, after the Wii U crashed and burned, a lot of people were saying Nintendo should just quit making consoles. The Switch was their answer, and it was a loud one. So what was the big idea? The genius of the Switch was its pure, simple concept. It was a home console you could play on your big TV, but you could also just grab it and take it with you anywhere as a powerful handheld. It wasn't trying to be the most powerful machine. It was focused on a simple philosophy. Fun anytime, anywhere, with anyone. So, with the Switch being a massive, massive hit and cementing their spot at the top of the gaming world, Nintendo started to think bigger. They started looking beyond the screen. They're literally bringing their digital worlds into our physical world. We're talking about dedicated Nintendo stores, huge fan events, and, of course, the incredibly awesome Super Nintendo World theme parks. They're making it so you can actually walk into the Mushroom Kingdom. And then, of course, there's Hollywood. The Super Mario Bros. Movie wasn't just a film, it was a box office juggernaut, pulling in over $1.3 billion. And now they're all in, with more movies on the way, including a live-action Legend of Zelda. And the key is, they're co-producing these themselves to make sure they get it right.
All right, so where does a company that is constantly changing go from here? What's the next big play for Nintendo?
Well, the successor to the Switch is definitely on the horizon, and we're already seeing hints of the powerhouse lineup they're planning for its launch. They're doing what they do best, getting ready to bring their millions of fans over to the new system with brand new adventures in their most loved series. And yeah, they're looking at all the new tech, even buzzworthy stuff like artificial intelligence. But here's the most important part, and this has always been Nintendo's secret. Their core philosophy will not change. No matter what tech they use, the goal is always the same. Create simple, accessible fun that absolutely anyone can enjoy.
When you step back and look at it all, from a little shop making playing cards in old Kyoto to a global entertainment giant, Nintendo's mission has always been about one thing: delivering fun. And as our technology and our world just keep changing, it leaves us with one really fascinating question to think about. What's fun gonna look like next?